Hi everyone, another lit lesson with GCS memes here for you today, looking especially at the time and place collection from the Edexcel board, and we're looking today at the poem Home Thoughts from Abroad, which is part of this poetry collection. We'll be looking at the three key emotions, the key context behind it before summarising this poem and how it fits into the collection, before finishing as always with the meme. So let's get ahead of the game straight away here and start thinking about the context. Alright, so this is the history behind the poem. Now, what's really important for you to know is that Robert Browning, the poet, did not live in England when this poem was written. He lived in Italy. And he was a massive fan of Italy and Italian culture. That's pretty well known. We've got a lot of records of that. So this was probably considered to be quite a wise and probably easy move for him and his wife. But there was another reason that they made this move as well. And that was because his wife was incredibly ill. That made him unable to move back to England. It was sort of during the time that the better weather and the higher temperatures in Italy would improve sick people's health quite immensely. So they were unable to move back to England at any point once they moved to Italy. And Browning was also what we would call a romantic poet. Now, I've done some other notes on romantic poetry in some of my other videos, so do check out the videos on Composed Upon Westminster Bridge, for example. But for today, just remember these two key things about romantic poetry. And the first thing is that they were believers in the power of the imagination, the idea that the imagination could transport the individual across seas, across lands, and allowed you to defy the physical limitation that you were being held behind. They were also huge lovers of the natural world and nature, and this is very evident in a poem full of natural imagery once again. So do remember that. Now I'm just going to press a quick button here which will highlight all of this context for you so that you can get this important information down in your notes. It is key that you do mention one or two pieces of context per the two poems you do for your comparison to show that you know the key historical and biographical influences that have shaped the poems that you decide to write about. Now, I'm just going to pause it here, or suggest that you pause it here as well for a bit longer if you find that I'm moving on too quickly, before we start looking at the three key emotions that I've noticed in this poem. So I will be moving on now, and we'll be looking at these three key emotions in this poem. So first of all, we need the poem in front of us. There it is. And the first key emotion that I think when I think of this poem is this idea of homesickness. Strange to think that someone who was living in Italy and loved Italy so much was feeling pretty homesick and wishing they were back in England during the springtime. And this becomes very clear because of the writer's use of the caesura that you can see here. And the caesura is just a sort of pause in the middle of the line, and this creates this longing tone in the poem. And these pauses show you that the character, the voice, the poet probably, was reminiscing about what England was like in the springtime. So if you read these lines, oh, to be in England now, they're really taking their time to enjoy the England they see in their imagination, in their mind's eye. As well as that, we get this stanza one ending with an exclamatory now, showing how these beautiful things happening quickly and at once in April, something that ultimately the writer, the voice, wants to go back to immediately, but ultimately can't because of the condition of his wife. So that's key feeling number one, homesickness. Key feeling number two is enthusiasm and excitement, and we get this through polysyndenton, the repetition of ands in a big list, and as you can see here there's quite a few in stanza 2. And what the voice is listing is all the beautiful sounds, smells and sights of the natural world of England in an extensive list and sentence here, and it shows you their excitement over the busy English countryside in May. Okay, so it's quite romantic, all right, because there's lots of natural imagery being described immensely positively here. As well as this, we have some imperatives used. The writer tells us to hark, which is a very old-fashioned word for listen, and the writer is trying to get us to hear this beautiful English springtime in their imagination as they think about it as well. So straight away, the writer is creating and trying to bring to life, not only for themselves but for the reader, the English countryside in May. And what also helps to do that is this lovely use of present tense, as we see here. That is the wise thrush. The voice kind of imagines they are reliving these experiences live, and this kind of adds to this excitement, this exhilaration that exists in this poem. Key feeling number 3 then, and this is one that I've seen quite often in this collection, is this idea of national pride and patriotism. Again, quite strange to see someone who loved Italy so much show their preference actually towards England, but that is certainly true here. And we have these metaphors of value that exist in this poem. And first of all, we've got this lovely religious word here, rapture. This idea, a rapture, is basically this idea of being transported to heaven during Christ's second coming. And when the writer hears the thrush, a bird, singing, they feel this immense feeling of joy and pleasure, as if they're almost being transported to heaven by it. So immediately that suggests that this bird song is incredibly valuable, almost a religious experience to the writer. We also have a reference to buttercups being a dower. Now, a dower is a share of inherited money. And this reflects that the writer treasures British plants, almost sees them as being as valuable as, if not more valuable than money. And on top of that, the writer goes as far to compare buttercups to a gaudy melon flower. Now, if you look at the image in the bottom left, on the far left there, we have the buttercup. The melon flower is on the right. Now, the melon flower is actually native flower from Italy. Buttercups are obviously more common in Britain. But what the writer is saying is that the buttercups are far brighter than the melon flower. So it appears in this poem he's actually saying that England is better than Italy. Both the countryside and by extension the whole of England is better than the Italian version in Italy itself. So that's the 3 key feelings in the poem that I think of. Now, as always, I've put a summary here for you. My favourite 3 quotations that I'd learned, the key feelings that I've mentioned there, the context I'd remember, and some good poems to compare this to for you to add to your notes. So feel free, once again, you can pause the video here, get all this information down, or put it into flashcards, whichever way you find is best for your revision, just as long as you're doing some work, as you must be if you're watching this video. Okay, if you haven't already paused it, I am going to be moving on now, so pause it just before I move the screen on. And as always, I finish my videos with a meme. I've used a little Pablo Escobar meme here for you. That's how I feel Robert Browning was probably feeling about being stuck in Italy. As always, check out my other videos, comment in the comment section, and like and subscribe to this video for more content and more time and place poetry videos. Thank you very much for watching.